Well, welcome to the second GuavaVet Find Remarkable vlog. And I'm really happy that I have two remarkable veterinarians joining me today to talk about the virtual vet. I will let Jessica and Tom introduce themselves. So Jessica, why don't you go ahead and start?
Great, thank you. So I'm Jessica Vogelsang. I am a veterinarian in beautiful San Diego, California. I have been active in the online space since 2009. I started a blog way back then to talk with pet parents around the world, and that was really sort of my entrance into the world of all of this had to offer. So I've been active in virtual care since I was working as a home hospice veterinarian. So I started dipping my toe in that back in 2014. I did some work with Whisker Docs, which is a tele-advice service. They're absolutely fantastic. And right now I am just developing some work to help veterinarians understand really the potential of this tool. So it's been a wild ride.
Tom, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Thanks, Aubrey. So I'm co-founder and CEO of PetsApp. I'm a vet by training, and I've run sort of multi-site veterinary groups, both here in the UK, but also out in Asia, across mainland China, Hong Kong, and Singapore. I was also inaugural chair of Vet Forum USA, UK, and APAC, and I sit on the board of a software engineering and design consultancy called YLD, who work with the likes of The Economist, The Trainline, British Gas, etc. So that's me. A bit of tech, a bit of vet. That's me.
Awesome. Well, this is not the Find Remarkable vlog for no reason, and I'm pretty sure that everybody will agree that I found two remarkable vets to join us today. Now, okay, so the idea is, and as I said, we are going to talk about being a virtual veterinary professional. So that's probably veterinarians and vet techs. So if maybe we'll start with you, Jessica, if you could just explain, at least from your side of the pond in the US, how telemedicine is being utilized there. Now, given that you have different states with different rules, but maybe if you can give us an overview.
So, it's been interesting because all of the concern always kind of comes back to this VCPR. So the veterinary client-patient relationship here in the States is the legal relationship that's established between a veterinarian and the client, which allows them to diagnose and prescribe. And if you don't have that, you can't do anything else. And so every state, all 50 of them, have their own rules about how you can and can't establish that. Some of them let you do it via telemedicine, some of them don't. And there's a lot of confusion. We had 17 states sort of change their minds during COVID, and some of it's just extraordinarily confusing. And so I think a lot of veterinarians are reticent, even when it's allowed, to engage in telemedicine because they're worried about what is and isn't allowed. But when you look at what that actually means about diagnosing and prescribing, it's a tiny little part of what we do. There's so much more with just giving advice and helping people understand when they need to come in and what it is we need to do when they come in. And so I think right now we're sort of in this state of trying to help veterinarians understand that, don't refuse to engage in this topic because you're scared about this one little thing that really isn't as important as what's going on right now, which is your phone's ringing off the hook. You can't get people in for a week. There's so many things we can be doing that doesn't run afoul of the regulations. And so that's kind of where we are right now. It's just still trying to get them to understand, I can help you even now, even during COVID.
Tom, so if you could give us a perspective from your side of things, from the UK, wherever PetsApp is currently available.
Yeah, I think what you said there is exactly right. That we've had practice owners using PetsApp, and I'm sure using other platforms, tell us that they're actually still growing. They've been able to retain jobs. So it's not something I anticipated when we were building PetsApp long before anyone had ever heard of COVID, that we'd be helping to save jobs. And then importantly, for the reasons that all of us come into the profession, it's to help them continue to advocate for their patients. And then through that process, they're seeing other advantages. So coming out of the first lockdown in the UK, we experienced pent-up demand, but with reduced capacity because of the social distancing aspect. And I know that's been experienced in the USA as well, and all over the world. And then people are seeing the capacity utilization improvements that they can get out of deploying digital. In practice, I remember when I was operating veterinary practices, you treat every phone call as if it's an emergency. And I used to have to really, really try hard to train the teams, answer within the first 3 rings. Now, why was that a hard ask? Why is that difficult? Well, treating every inquiry as if it's a matter of life and death takes a mental toll on people and means you have to interrupt what you're doing. Even just changing phone calls to that sort of text chat element allows prioritization, puts the teams more in control of their own workflows, for example. So I think there's been this immediate need, but then in addressing that immediate need, we're discovering these better ways of delivering veterinary care.
Thom, but your app, is it mainly, do you cater mainly for small animal practice, or is it all types of veterinarians? I mean, treating all species?
We have had a wide range of species being treated via PetSap, but it is called PetSap. So if you're a horse owner, you have to be comfortable downloading an app called PetSap, right? And many are.
Well, it is a companion animal, so in most countries.
Exactly. So you've got mixed practices. There are some equine practices. Small animal first opinion is certainly the bulk of the usage on PetSap.
Jessica, and on your side, I mean, do you see it mainly in small animal or well, let's say companion animal, let's differentiate companion animal and small animal. Companion animal, I would suggest in most countries would include horses, but let's talk small animal first. How do you see the usage or the utility, at least then in the US?
It's sort of the same as what Thomas said. I think it will bleed over into mixed large animal, but right now the focus is on small animal, and I think here maybe just because it's just where we're marketing, the utility is certainly there for both of them, because it's not really about what animal you're treating. Really, it's just a means of communication. Like, you talk on the phone the exact same way you do to a horse owner, a cow owner, a dog owner. And so it's more of a mindset, and the utility is there, especially because we are having the same problem. There is so much understaffing and capacity shortage right now. And so that's really, I think, where people are going to sort of realize, I need to get my act together, COVID or not, because we're sort of in an untenable situation right now.
It is, but it's interesting. And Thom, you've mentioned this before. It's not as if this is new. Who, if anybody, is it we veterinarians ourselves limiting our use, or is it that we've not been guided well enough by our governing bodies and associations?
Well, we have 50 of them, and some of them are extraordinarily pro telemedicine, and some of them are really, really anti. And I happen to live in a state that's the most restrictive in the country, which is interesting because California is not usually thought of being, an anti-progress sort of state, but in this regard we are. And I just last month, was sitting on a call with the regulatory body, trying to convince them, like, hey, can we please just do this a little more? Look at what's going on. There's been no complaints anywhere that we can find. Ontario's been doing it for 3 years. And their response was, nope, if you can't smell it, you can't help it. It was just the strangest thing, because I don't agree, but
I know.
They make the rules.
I've not heard that one before. I'm definitely going to use it. Thom, sorry, I stopped you from answering. Please go ahead.
No, not at all. The interesting thing is there's lots of completely uncontroversial use cases out there. So, for example, discharge consultations, usually they're free. Usually they're bundled with the cost of the procedure, but they compete for paid consultation slots in the incredibly busy evening consultation block, right? Well, you've got that patient in the clinic with you. So the consultation is entirely for the benefit of the pet owner, giving them the discharge instructions. You could take that consultation, that discharge consultation earlier in the day, do it earlier in the day, and free up a consultation slot in the busy evening period. So we've seen practices do that. Most pet owners can take 7 minutes, the average length of a video consult, out of their day to join that discharge consultation. But then some clinics are taking it even further. They're doing that discharge asynchronously. So they're recording the discharge instructions at a time that suits them, posting them onto the chat. The owner then has ongoing reference to them, can share them with the other caretakers. We know that the majority of pets have more than one owner. And the pet owner then has ongoing access to their veterinary team to ask any follow-up questions, post-op rechecks, inpatient updates. I mean, the number of times in veterinary practice, I would admit a patient, politely say to the owner, don't call us, we'll call you. But they always call you, and they call you at a time when you just happen to be taking blood from a fractious cat. And so you can't get to the phone. And then when you try and call them back, they don't answer. And you've got this wonderful game of phone tag that absolutely no one loves. You can eliminate that. Have them download the app, send them a photo of their super cute dog recovering from surgery, and they'll love you forever for doing it. And it actually saved you time. It's not an additional thing. And I think this is the double-edged sword of the pandemic, is that people are seeing this product, this category of products, as a direct replacement for physical veterinary services. It's not. This is digital augmentation. This is creating joined up online to offline experiences for pet owners in the way that they've now come to expect of every other service that they interact with.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and Jessica alluded to it earlier, and I'll get back to that now. And it is really that there are certain things where we, as professionals, veterinary nurses, veterinary technicians, veterinarians, are, it will be hands. We can have all the technology in the world, but we don't have enough people. So we need to use technology to give us the opportunity to spend more time where it's most important, and that is for those things that we really need to put our hands on the animal to smell it. But there are many other things where we can exactly do this. And the reason for that is, and Jessica, that's why I want to come back to you, is we don't have enough people.
No, it's so true. We have what we call sort of the cycle of care, right? And so it's every touch point along the way, from when a patient comes in to when everything's resolved. And so it starts with it's always the phone call right now. The phone call, I have a problem. And then they come in and they see the technician and they get the history and they take the weight and the doctor does what they need to do. They get their discharge instructions, and all of that is happening inside the clinic right now, inside these four walls. And it's so inefficient because, as Thom said, you're getting pulled in different directions, and that CSR, I don't know what if they're called the same, but basically like front desk receptionists are trying to handle the phone, and now you have this additional burden of running back and forth to the parking lot, and it just doesn't work, and it's not necessary when you can be moving so many of those things offline. And as Thom said, we're not trying to get rid of that hands-on part. That will always be vital. What we're trying to do is actually give you more time to do that inside the clinic by moving some of those other things offline. And without those distractions, you can actually get them done more quickly and efficiently. That's extraordinary, Thom, that you said 7 minutes is the average length of these consultations. I mean, compare that to what it is for in-person. That adds up really quickly. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And then there's also, for us, there's always been staffing shortage issues. And for a lot of people, are heavily skewed towards women in the healthcare space. You couldn't come in if you wanted to. We don't have health or access to childcare right now. You're taking care of someone at home. And so it's not that there aren't enough people, it's that there aren't enough people that are willing to go into the clinic. And so if you afforded them an opportunity to participate, they would be thrilled. They want, you didn't spend 4 years or however long you did training to be involved in this profession to not be a part of it. But we have made it an untenable job for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, if we need to change the way we do things. Interesting thing that I heard is we make better things so that we can do better. And I think, Thom, at least with what you're doing, and Jessica, with what you are promoting, is that this is exactly that. Let's make better things so we can do things better. Now, I'd like to look a bit at the future now, if you don't mind, moving on. So in human medicine, the technology is being developed in such a way that people are, those in the know, the futurists, are saying, well, there will be a day where you'll be hospitalized at home with all these sensors and monitors attached, and you won't have to be in hospital. Now, that would be great. Now, can you see a situation where the hands-on will be less required? Maybe I'll start with you, Thom.
It's interesting, Aubrey, that this is going to sound incredibly trite and incredibly cliched, but the future is now. the vets and nurses and receptionists working full-time from home on the PetsApp platform, serving patients remotely in a joined-up collaborative way with their colleagues in the clinic. The first time I ever pitched PetsApp to a practice, I had a vet come to me afterwards and she said to me, I love my job. I love this team. I love this practice, but I've just had to hand in my notice. I cannot make my identity as a veterinary professional chime with my role as a mother, a partner, with my home life. And so she'd had to give it up. And she said, I hope that you are successful with this, because it would allow me to continue that relationship with this practice and give me an improved entry point, returning back to full-time in the profession, in the clinic. So she got it. She got it in a way that I didn't get. You know, she saw this profound change coming, and I kind of thought, yeah, that would be lovely, you know, but we're providing software to veterinary clinics. Let's see what they do with it. And she's just been proven right. I came across a story of a vet who thought she was going to have to leave the profession because she has two vulnerable children who have had to be shielded during the pandemic. But no, she's working full time, doing remote consultations, taking some of the strain off the in-clinic team. And for the clinics themselves, we talk about the sort of talent shortage, but think of the depth of talent you'll have access to if you can offer this flexible working opportunities, these mixed, even if it's mixed opportunities, you know, on this day you do remote consults, anything that needs to be seen in practice, you book it in for the next day that you're in practice. Any emergencies, the in-clinic team will deal with. I think this sort of mixed reality, these online to offline experiences, both for the pet owner, but also for the veterinary team, that they're already happening. So sorry I dodged the question a little bit, because in terms of the sort of huge innovation coming down in terms of remote diagnostics, I can see it coming. My view on that side of things is that there'll always be your local veterinary clinic at the heart of the experience. That experience may well be augmented by technology, but it will never be disintermediated by technology.
No, I agree, but I think, Jessica, maybe you want to comment on this. Let's give the typical example of doing a glucose curve in the practice. Well, the technology exists already now for these monitors that are attached to the animal's body for data to be sent to the remote veterinarian. So, you know, can you see at least how, you know, technologies will be used in future to make this job of the virtual veterinarian possible?
No, absolutely. You know, and it's kind of mind-boggling to see all of the different diagnostics that are out there. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago that I was in Nicaragua. I was doing a trip with this group called World Vets, and that was the first time you had an ECG that you could use your phone for. Like, we weren't going to be dragging an ECG out into the middle of a field in Nicaragua, but we could actually get it using our phones. And so there's so much potential here, not only to your point about like trying to get around coming in, but when it's just not possible to be using these technologies to actually be able to provide better care. And I think, you know, it's really just about a mindset shift, about understanding what's possible and understanding that, to Tom's point, you will never remove the veterinarian from being the center of that chain, and it shouldn't be. But how can you be more efficient and just take advantage to actually improve our care, you know? So everything you said, Tom, about, you know, the mom who had to leave practice just resonated with me, because that was my situation. And for hundreds of my colleagues, I had to leave clinical practice when my mother was diagnosed with brain cancer. So she was living at home and I was getting her through hospice. And we saw the doctor once. I mean, it's not like this is not an intensive thing. Like, somebody dying of brain cancer requires a lot of care. And we had the nurses come in, you know, and they were gathering that information and doing all of these things remotely. And so all of it is possible. We just have to, one, sort of relinquish a little bit of that control we want to have over every interaction, and trust our support team to be able to go out there and get those data points that we want, because that's part, it's very hard. And I use my hands a lot. Obviously, we all love to use our hands, right? And I think we have to sort of separate the idea of data gathering from actually touching things. And if we can get through that little point, then that'll make us, I think, a little more open to this idea of using all of these great technologies. I don't care who looks in a dog's ear if they have an ear infection, as long as it's with an otoscope. Like a technician can do it in someone's home as well as I can do it in the clinic, and the dog's probably going to be a lot happier. So
I think you're right, Jessica, that these collaborative experiences across the veterinary team are becoming more and more important. And actually, with the accelerated adoption of technology, sometimes we've seen vets try and do everything on their own. And it's, the vet's going to be on this platform, and you've lost the support of the front of house team or the nursing team. Whereas we've seen, it's across 120,000 interactions now, we've seen that any experience that includes a nurse or a receptionist in addition to a vet, sort of it's a collaborative experience, is more likely to be monetized, has a higher average transaction value, and has improved customer feedback at the end of it. So you still want to have these collaborative, joined up experiences that involve that engage the whole veterinary team, even more so when you're doing it digitally.
So what I've heard now is a collaboration. In other words, being able to work in a team, relinquishing some of the control, of the case, or of handling a specific case, a patient, a client. So that brings me to the next question: is, does it take a certain person, a certain type of veterinarian, veterinary nurse, veterinary technician, to be able to do this job? In other words, being the virtual vet or the virtual nurse. Thom, I think, let's start with you.
I'm not sure, and it's maybe early to tell, what exactly is the right skill set for if it's going to be a full-time remote role. But what I can say is that the wrong people to engage with this are people that are already feeling put upon, feeling close to burnout, feeling like this might be one more thing that's going to be asked of them and thrown in front of them. And I think that's the sort of situation that you confront often is this just going to be one more thing that you expect of me, one more thing that pet owners expect of me? And that's where you can come across the pushback, where instead of people seeing this opportunity for this future of, we get to retain the incredible talent we have within the profession for longer, they're seeing the problems. And one thing that's been really important to me and my team is finding, what's in it for me.
And Jessica, what's in it for us? What's in it for us?
Yeah.
If you were to write a job ad now, what would you say? What's in it for me being able to do the virtual veterinarian?
Oh, that's my favorite topic. I love seeing all these ads out there right now that start with all the equipment they have. Like, don't lead with that. And the same with telehealth. Don't lead with what it is. Like, nobody cares that it's an app. What we're offering you is an opportunity. Now, and this depends on whether you're asking about the veterinarian who's going to be virtual or the clinic. But in both cases, just being able to work and be engaged in the field, because I think for a lot of these veterinarians and technicians who are looking for this type of job, it is for that. They can't, they're just limited for whatever reason. And so, hey, this is a chance you can still be relevant and use this degree and be important. You have a lot of knowledge that you can impart. And for clinics, to Thom's point, this isn't about being on the cutting edge or, getting to show off that you have this technology or bringing all this stuff in. It's really about getting to help more pets, scaling what you do so that you can be in clinic, make more money in less time. And we have people right now that are waiting 12 hours to get into the emergency room. They're waiting a week or two or longer for non-urgent cases. And it's always an interesting thing to me to hear veterinarians say, it's going to harm them if I do this telemedicine appointment, therefore they need to wait a week and a half, which seems even worse,
Yep.
Just why aren't we willing to engage with some of these things? And so, it is very hard to get people to want to engage in this conversation right now because they're exhausted and they're burned out. And there is a learning curve at the beginning. Like, you do need to invest a little bit of time, but it pays dividends in the end. And so that's why I'm really grateful for people like Thom who are actually getting those data points together, because I think we're also you need to actually know that on the other side of this, we can show this is the amount of time you save.
One thing I think it's worth highlighting is when we say access to a broader talent pool, there are people out there that have maybe 3 hours in their day that they could monetize, right? Now, you can't monetize that even as a locum or a relief veterinarian. It's not enough time to sort of come into the practice, come out of the practice, and for the practice to bother fitting you into their rota. But you could monetize that 3 hour block in between your childcare arrangements, your partners come home from work, you want to, maintain your contact with the profession. You could monetize that remotely in this way. So think how many people there are like that, with these slightly awkward periods of time where they could still be engaged in veterinary care, if only there were the opportunity to do so remotely.
With regards to the curriculum and the training, are we giving our young colleagues the training that they require? Are we giving them the tools they need to be virtual veterinarians?
I think some of the schools out there are starting to see the value of this, and they're trying, but we're still a ways out. Right now, we're all still figuring out how this works. And so, it's one of the reasons I started a Facebook group in March, the Veterinary Telemedicine Facebook group. Okay, great. Yeah. So I actually started it in 2018, and there were 2 members for 2 years, myself and my friend Danielle. And then I finally was like, hey, maybe people want to join. We had 3,000 members in a week. And so I did that because there was no other way to get information. We're literally crowdsourcing how to do telemedicine. And so we know bundles more 6 months out than we did. And we're going to know even more, another 6 months from now. And so I think that they will get there, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And so there's a lot of frustration out there right now because we're still in sort of that data gathering mode. But, for people who already see the big picture and know where this is going, I know we're going to get there. I just don't know the timeline yet.
But Thom, I'd like to ask you as well, in your opinion, the vet schools in the UK, is there appetite for putting this into a curriculum so that we can get these young veterinarians ready for the digital communication age of being a virtual veterinarian?
I think there is, and it's like anything, some do better than others with it. I think there's been quite a big distraction currently in terms of engaging with this, is how to serve their student populations remotely. But this is part of the solution. And I think this is an incredible development tool for training up vets. I know, when I was a new graduate veterinarian, I would find every excuse to leave the consult room and go and Google stuff and maybe I should have been braver and just do it in front of the pet owners. But certainly if you're consulting remotely, especially if it's via asynchronous chat, you can just ask a colleague. You can just open up, Google or Vin or whatever your preferred search method is to find that information and come back to them. And it's a less pressured environment for you to hone your craft. So I think there are real opportunities to one, capture case studies as well. So capture cases, because you've got this data exhaust of, hey, I sent this photo. What would you do next? What's your approach to this case? Okay, look at this video consult as a communication skills piece. What do you think was done well here? What do you think could have been differently? There's also new skills that they need in terms of communication. And I think this is something that no vet school focuses on enough. Many do a very good job, but no one focuses on enough, which is the communication skills, the soft skills that are needed to be a vet. That's what really arms you when you first come out there. If you can manage pet expectations well, then you have a more forgiving time as a new graduate, I think. And what that looks like, what communication looks like, is different. For example, we had feedback when we first launched PetSap that if you are using the desktop version as a veterinary team member, talking to an owner using their mobile, the owner would use emojis, but you couldn't reply with emojis. And people like, that feels kind of cold, like judgmental, overly formal. So we added in an emoji picker. And it's just incredible to me that exchanging emojis is in some way similar to like the non-verbal cues, mirroring, that sort of thing that happens in a real world consultation. So I think there are skills, there is stuff to learn. There is best practice that we're discovering that will come through, and the vet schools will have a role in propagating that, as well as other ways for established veterinarians to access this new sort of world, this new best practice information.
Well, so now my next question is the final one. Do you see this as being a role? Can you see the role of the virtual veterinarian in future? Where this is my job. What's my job? I'm a virtual veterinarian. I'm a telemedicine veterinarian.
Oh, absolutely. And they're already out there to a very small degree. It's just going to continue to grow as we see what they're able to do. So it's more of like a care coordinator, almost like a primary care doctor sort of thing, where maybe you're still doing some of the hands-on, but you're also sort of outsourcing and just fostering this collaborative environment. I think that really is the value of all of this virtual care, is just giving us tools to scale and access and bring everybody into the room that needs to be there. I mean, the teleconsultation, which we didn't even get a chance to tap into, is a huge issue. There's always been an access problem, and it's so simple to just use telemedicine to bring that cardiologist into the clinic. I mean, I don't know how it is for you guys, but a lot of the times right now, we just call and impose on them, and they get on the phone and talk to us. And so that's not fair to them either. This is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and Thom, can you see? I mean, there's definitely an appetite for that. I know you've worked with some specialists with regards to having this telemedicine service. And a question B to that is, will that be allowed over borders?
Yeah. So taking the first question first, in terms of it being a specialized role, I think in some cases it already is. So think of like Lacuna Diagnostics and their virtual pathologists and that sort of thing. And there's imaging specialists that do a lot of work remotely. I think there is a danger, though, that we exceptionalize it too much. If you think that, and too early as well, if you think you need to be a specialist to be able to engage with the opportunities that this top technology provides, I think that's not quite right, and we're not quite there. But you're right that there will be some people that are temperamentally just more suited to this form of client service, patient advocacy, these forms of interaction. So I can see that happening. In terms of cross-border, I think, you know, the regulatory environment, even though it's maybe not as quite as tight as in human healthcare, there are going to be regulatory barriers there. And I'm not sure, from my perspective, I'm not sure it's super desirable. And I think this can sometimes trigger the red flags when we sort of talk about this stuff. It can trigger the red flags that stop people engaging with it. Fundamentally, if for time immemorial, the number one driver of which veterinary practice you go to is postcode or zip code. You know, and by offering virtual care, maybe you can expand your footprint somewhat, but your local community practice is still going to be at the heart of this experience. Maybe they can augment that with full-time virtual roles. In fact, you know, we know that they can do that, but still, I think the idea that a pet owner is going to opt to talk to a specialist 1,000 miles away, you know, when you talk about telemedicine, especially a year ago at all the big conferences, immediately people are thinking, but then won't people in Singapore prescribe opioids to a dying dog in London? And you're like, no, why would that happen? Like, no, that's not going to happen. But could we give veterinary clinics access to the very best internal medicine specialist to do a teleconsultation? That side of things, vet to vet, it already happens. I remember when I was out in China messaging specialists for advice, you know, all the time, you know, and we send stuff to laboratories in Germany. I remember there was one test, I can't remember what that you could only find at UC Davis. And so we're sending it out and we're getting reports from each other all the time. So again, to the extent that it will happen, it's kind of ever been thus. And that's not a terribly exciting answer, is it, Aubrey? So I feel like I'm talking to a technologist and I'm kind of talking you down from this brave new world that we're confronting together. But it's
coming. It's coming whether we want it or not. I'll before we end and before I give you an opportunity to talk. So I was in a, you know, I shouldn't be doing talking. You should. But there's this thing about I said, look, I can see the histopathologist and the radiologist that they, specifically in veterinary medicine, that it may not be obsolete their profession, but it's definitely going to change. And what I said was, it will change in the way that you probably won't have, and this is just what I think, you probably won't have a radiologist, but you'll have this person who can deal with image data. So And that is what I meant by a new profession. In other words, they will work with data that comes in from, whatever machine did the histopathology, whatever machine did the radiology, that would be something new.
I think you're bang on that, in terms of there's this incredibly overlooked and underrated field of veterinary informatics. I think that is going to expand massively. I think how we look at and deal with the incredible amounts of data that we have and use that in a way that improves patient care and patient outcomes. I think that sort of big data opportunity in veterinary has been around for a long time. And at some point, we're going to have to confront it. And you will need specialist individuals to be able to deliver against that opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, and Jessica, I think it's the same with, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's exactly the same with genome and genomic medicine, is that we will have these people who need to be able to deal with data.
Yeah, well, I think when you talk to the average veterinarian and you say the word big data, their eyes start to glaze over, right? Like, oh God, like one more thing I have to think about. But it's true. And I think for me, when I'm trying to get a feel for where this is going, I just always look to the human side, right? And so we know what's going to happen with that. And I think for vets, there's so much noise around our lives. And what we want at the core of everything, to Tom's point, like we want our relationship with our owners and their pets, for most of us, is why we got into it. And in terms of like cross-border regulations, like none of that matters, because people want you. They want that. Like, this is a relationship-based thing more than a medicine-based thing. And you still need all the rest of that. Like the data and the medicine and all of that supports what we do, which is fundamentally a relationship profession, and all the rest of it just makes it better. So the more people we have that assist us in doing that job better, the better job we're going to do for everyone. And so, like, I welcome our data overlords. Yay! this is a good thing for everyone. I'm not going to be the one to do it, but thank you for being there.
So, okay, I really thank you so much, for your time. What I'd like, and I know that people watching this would like to know more about where they can find information that you provide, or websites or blogs or anything. So Jessica, take us out. You first. Where can people find you?
So I have like 8,000 touch points on the web, but drjessicavogelsang.com is my website, and the Facebook group, it's literally just called the Veterinary Telemedicine Facebook community. And we just sit and everybody shares their problems and resolutions. So those are the two places for this topic that I would say come find me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thom?
I'd say don't bother with me, just go straight to Jessica's Facebook group. I think it's a fantastic community you created there. But yeah, PetsApp, it's a client communication and engagement platform. You can find more about it on petsap.com. You can reach me at tom@petsap.com. That's got an unnecessary H in the Tom, THOM. And I'm on LinkedIn too. Just search Thom Jenkins and you'll find me there.
And Thom, maybe just for the benefit of my viewers, you've got the webinars that you have.
That's right.
Regularly.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we've got this webinar series, and we try and cover just a whole range of topics. We've had a Harvard professor of happiness on to come and talk to everyone. We talked about veterinary pricing. We talked about how to make lameness consultations work remotely. So it's a whole range of topics, not just limited to telemedicine. And you can find those at petsap.com/webinar.
They're really good.
Thanks, Jessica.
Folks, thank you so very much. Many different time zones, and see you soon.
Thanks both.